Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a specific category. For example, this week, we're looking for the best Assassin's Creed game that isn't an Assassin's Creed game, and you can't have Ghost of Tsushima. Ubisoft, of course, just announced a ton of new Assassin's Creed projects, which is great news for me. I love Assassin's Creed. I love it so much that I'm not even going to sully the occasion by crowbarring in some tenuous joke about my boss being some sort of crumbling ruin. Speaking of which, I'm joined by Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry. We're also joined by Associate Editor Alex Donaldson and Guides Editor James Bilcliffe, who won last time. You were on, if I recall correctly, James.
And so, yes, you recall correctly, and the decision was also correct. Right.
So does that cancel out the time before that when you lost and you smarted about it for like 3 weeks?
I'm still sore about losing again. On the basis of controls to a game on a console with a Rube Goldberg machine as a controller, but whatever.
Right. So we've got a big topic to get into because every game since Assassin's Creed has been an Assassin's Creed game on some level, hasn't it? Alex, what's your choice?
I'm going back to when Assassin's Creed was relatively new. Because, you're right.
Yeah, you are going back.
And especially Ubisoft, right? Like, they released so much. I can't think there was that racing game they did where you race across America. I can't think what it was called. Was that The Crew?
Yeah, Crew.
And even that was an Assassin's Creed game, basically. It had towers and everything, and it was a bloody racing game. But I'm going for something quite different. So my pick is the Saboteur. So
lovely.
This is a great game. Final game from Pandemic Studios before EA
God rest
destroyed them. Basically, the Saboteur is, I would guess you would say, it's Assassin's Creed with a tiny sprinkling of sort of some elements of GTA and stuff like that. And you play as an Irish race car driver who, like, drinks loads, constantly drunk. And he emigrates to France because he's wanted by the law, because of course he is. And basically World War II, Nazi occupation of France, and he becomes this freedom fighter who is basically an assassin. And it has a lot of similar sort of mechanical beats to Assassin's Creed. So the sandboxy design, the way the stealth works, the lots and lots of climbing, it being a little bit open-ended, it being all about revenge. It's all very Assassin's Creed. And the thing that I love about it is early on in Assassin's Creed, for those first 2-3 games, numbered games, obviously they did 3 Assassin's Creed 2 games. We spent, I don't know about everyone else, but I spent a lot of time thinking about where is this series going, the modern day stuff with Desmond. It was like, where's it going to end up? And this was the first game that, to me, gave this glimpse of here's what an Assassin's Creed would be like if it was in a relatively contemporary setting, where you've got assassinations, but you've also got guns and cars.
And
it wasn't exactly contemporary because obviously it was Second World War, but it's a hell of a lot more contemporary than everything Assassin's Creed was doing at the time. And I feel like actually Assassin's Creed could have gone in one of 2 different directions after the first few games, which was basically they could have gone and made games like the Saboteur, or they could have gone and made stuff which leaned into the fantasy, which is what they ended up doing. Obviously, you've now got gods and all sorts in Assassin's Creed. But yeah, I just love it. Any game that sort of gives you there's many games that are about killing Nazis, but surprisingly few open worldy sort of games that are about that. And so I really love that they built this, they built this Nazi-occupied version of Paris that you could go around. Had that beautiful sort of, often looked quite grey, didn't it? But the lights would pop and
they played with colour in quite a similar way to the way Assassin's Creed games do, actually, when like you've got eagle mode and you've got like all the kind of the different primary colours for different kinds of targets and that. But the Saboteur had, it was like a Sin City thing where it was all black and white in occupied districts, apart from like certain objects it had a really striking look. and interesting that they did Paris years before Ubisoft got round to it, and that's kind of home turf for them. So, but yeah, so I love the Saboteur. I really enjoyed playing it at the time.
Everyone loved it so much the studio closed.
I think the thing was EA had, because this is the thing, I was looking this up and it sold okay and it received quite good reviews, but I think by the time that game was nearly finished, the way I've always read that situation personally is that what EA wanted was BioWare, what EA wanted was Mass Effect and Dragon Age, and Pandemic and BioWare were owned by the same holding company, and so they came as a package deal. So I feel like the writing was almost on the wall for Pandemic from the moment they were purchased.
What did they do before the Saboteur? The Mercenaries 2 was the one right before that, wasn't it?
They did Mercenaries 2. They did that Lord of the Rings Conquest game. They obviously they were involved in the early Star Wars Battlefront games. Ironically, right, that's the thing. And then they closed them, and then years down the line, EA ends up making Star Wars Battlefront. They could have done with keeping some of those guys around.
Except they made it a Battlefield game and also shit.
Yes, but they did Full Spectrum Warrior, which is a game that I hold close to my heart, even though it's very much...
I hold that close to my heart, but I haven't played it. I only hold it close to my heart because there was always adverts for it during Star Trek Voyager.
I just remember, that was the whole thing where that game, it was like, this is a game based on the real tools they used to teach tactics in the US military. Yeah. And they made a big deal out of that. And obviously at the time, that came out in 2004, so we were right in the thick of war.
The forever war. I love the Saboteur, God, it's kind of at the tail end of that. We were talking about that before with GTA clones. I think actually on an episode James was on, and we had this really inventive period, basically in the first decades of this century, where there was tons of GTA clones all doing really kind of weird and wonderful things with the format, and Saboteur was one of them. It was really striking. You wouldn't get a mainstream video game with that kind of art style and that does that kind of thing with color grading anymore, I don't think.
Well, when you think about that generation, it's the brown generation, right? When I think of that generation, the game that pops into my mind of all things, and I think I've probably said this before, is 50 Cent Blood on the Sand. I feel
for me it's Army of Two, so
it's similar, right? It's like a slightly crap game that's inspired by Gears of War that is so brown and so beat it. I mean, I love 50 Cent Blood on the Sand. I'm sure I'll pick it one week for this. The interesting thing about the Saboteur, I think, is it is if Assassin's Creed and GTA had a baby, but there's so much Assassin's Creed in it. And I think the sad thing again to what Tom said is it didn't really get a chance for even the end of the game. It's sort of the last line of the game is one of those classic stingers, which is meant to lead into a sequel of him saying, yes, we've defeated the Nazis here, but we're just getting started. And it's like, oh, they're going to go somewhere else now. And then EA closed them. And to give a sort of, a timeline on that, EA completed the purchase of Pandemic in January 2008. The Saboteur came out in December 2009. Yeah. That was a month after EA closed Pandemic. So EA closed Pandemic even before the Saboteur was finished.
Wow.
They took a handful of Pandemic employees into EA Los Angeles, who made Command & Conquer, who also no longer exist. And so though that handful of employees, that small team of 30, 40 people, finished the Saboteur, and then that was it.
What a swan song for a studio. It's probably their best game, I would argue.
It probably is their best. I mean, a lot of people love Battlefront and Battlefront 2. And obviously they did Destroy All Humans, which a lot of people love also. Yeah. The original one.
Yeah, Mercenaries was good at the time. Sequel was a bit naff, but
I do think the Saboteur is probably their best game. It's definitely their most artistic game as well. Yeah. Like we said about that art style, it is really, really striking. And it's definitely part of what I think of as a golden age of open world games that aren't GTA. So you had this, and the 360 Godfather 2 game was really good.
Oh yeah, and Scarface as well, and loads of stuff like that. That was PS2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But loads of mad stuff like that. And I suppose Destroy All Humans is kind of in the same vein as that's kind of a GTA clone, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah. And Saints Row, of course, but obviously Saints Row now is crap.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a bit crap. James, you've got a really weird choice. And speaking of the PS2, I'm so intrigued as to how you're going to fit this into the topic. I'm really excited to hear from you on this one.
Well,
what is your pick?
Yeah, I've taken a little bit of a gamble in that. In my infinite wisdom, I've chosen what is essentially a kid's game that came out when you were all about 26. So you're right. It's going to be a tough sell.
Untold Legends 2. It's Untold Legends 2.
Yeah.
Can I just point out that you've got a beautiful wee cat behind you?
I do. He's very sweet.
I think mine's doing a shit somewhere, but we'll carry on.
A brilliant audio feature there. But yeah, so my choice this time is Sly 2 Band of Thieves. You said we can't have a bad Sucker Punch game in Ghost of Tsushima. 2014's Game of the Year that for some reason came out in 2020.
So you've gone for the Sucker Punch angle.
So I've gone for a little bit of a Sucker Punch angle. But
Okay.
I think when you think of Assassin's Creed, a lot of people buy into the hype, buy into the marketing, I think essentially that it's a stealth game. But I think Assassin's Creed as a series has always kind of lent into that stealth game angle, but it's never really had any stealth mechanics. And it's more of a kind of globe hopping character action game. And when I think of that, I go to one of my favorite games of all time, Sly 2 Band of Thieves. And it's in a similar vein as things like Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
Where it's a sort of for all ages game, but it has a lot of charm, a lot of effort, a lot of really good design and gameplay to it. And has anybody else played it? Was it a bit after your time? Or?
I think I played the remaster for a bit when it came out, but I didn't fully get it. I'll be honest. I do like the he's a burglar, right? He's a cat burglar, but he's a fox or something.
He's a raccoon.
Raccoon. Gee, I can't believe it. He's a fox or something.
And you're thinking of Nate Fox, the Sucker Punch guy. He's a raccoon. So yeah, he's Sly Raccoon. So seeing as none of you have played it, I'll do a bit more of an overview. So it's basically a furry's dream. It's a world of personas.
Yeah. I was going to point that out. I was debating with myself internally whether or not to mention the word furry, but yeah.
So this video is already demonetized, so we'll. So he's a raccoon, and he's a ancestral inheritor of the Cooper gang. So his name's Sly Cooper, and he's the leader of the Cooper gang, who are a crack gang of furry thieves that go around stealing jewels and being sort of rogue. Lovable rogues in a sort of Han Solo, Indiana Jones kind of whip cracking time or whatever. So the first game was a bit more of a straight platformer in the kind of Crash Bandicoot vein. I think there was even kind of time limits on the levels and all stuff like that. But Sly 2 took it to the next level with more of a storyline, more of a, as I say, kind of a globe hopping adventure that was based on character action. And it includes a lot of things that you do see in Assassin's Creed, with, like Alex said, with the Saboteur, sandboxy levels. There's that globe hopping angle with you go to different real world places. Like there's a Paris level, there's a Prague level, there's levels in India, in Canada, in the North Pole, all sorts of that sort of stuff. And you are stealing pieces of the Cooper gang's kind of eternal rival, Clockwork, who's like this big evil clockwork owl who was defeated in the first game, but the evil Claw gang are trying to put him back together, essentially. And it's just really good. It's one of those things, in that great era of kids games where, like I say, they had a lot of effort, had a lot of design, had a lot of really talented people working on making them as charming, as interesting, as great to play as possible. And it's because he's a raccoon burglar, it has that stealth angle. Yeah. So I
tuned out because it was so boring. Did you explain how it was like Assassin's Creed or not?
Yeah, it's got loads of different It's got loads of different elements of it. It has the sandbox angle, it has the globetrotting angle, it has lots of different powers to get away from, to sneak around and to get around, and you can kill people too.
Basically, air miles and theft, Tom, is essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because, as I say, Assassin's Creed, you do a lot of killing, but you do a lot of infiltrating, you do a lot of stealing, you do a lot of walking slowly, talking to people. But Slag 2 is a better game because it doesn't have that. So, yeah, it's just a great game. It has a lot of similar, slightly stealthy, but more character action oriented elements.
I tell you what, I've only played the first game, so that's why I was, I think, a bit confused when you first said. But okay, so I know now that the sequel is different and a little more sandboxy and a little more.
I wouldn't even say a little bit. It's a lot more sandboxy. It's a very guided story. Like I say, you're going around collecting different pieces, and there's always like a kind of megalomaniac villain in each area, like there is in Assassin's Creed, that you go from different target to different target, and you have the within the level you have the main target. So in the Paris level, there's a kind of lizard dude called Dimitri who runs a nightclub, and you have to steal the. He has the tail feathers of Clockwork, I think, and because they're made of such great metal, he's turned them into counterfeiting tools to print money. So you have to steal back these counterfeiting tools in Paris, and then in the next level, there's and I remember in the Prague one, I think they have the hypnotizing eyes of Clockwork that the spider villain in that one is using to kind of rule the city and all that sort of stuff. So.
Right. That is this is basically an Assassin's Creed game. I'm pretty sure like the targets in Origins are called shit like the spider, the lizard.
Exactly.
And they've all got fucking artifacts of Eden, and that's basically this Clockwork shit you're talking about.
Exactly. Pieces of Eden. This is even better than I thought.
Wow. Okay. I'm shocked. I thought you'd really struggle to make this one fit the topic. I thought you were gonna. I'm
disappointed.
I thought you constructed some mad 20-minute argument at 1 a.m. that you were gonna just pick whatever and try and fit it in, but this is like this slots in beautifully. I'm amazed. All right,
it is a brilliant game. It's difficult to kind of like Tom probably might even vouch for me here, that you think about the most recent Ratchet and Clank game. It's one of those things that it's difficult. That it seems like, it's just a kid's game. It's a kind of Pixar rip-off, that sort of thing. But when you actually play it, it has so much effort, so much design, so much charm to it that you'd think, actually, this is really brilliant just on its own.
But that's the Pixar thing, right? The Pixar secret that they're so good at, which is why Pixar began to surpass Disney Animation Studios, is that they were and still are excellent at making children's films that have a lot in them that are for adults. A lot of jokes that only adults get, a lot of references that only adults get, and storylines that aren't just old hat to adults. And that in games, Nintendo is exceptionally good at that, but it's quite rare outside Nintendo. But this is totally, like, I think when you compare Mario to a lot of other platformers, for instance, the difference is night and day. But these are some of the games where, and the modern Ratchets too, you can see that sort of thread of adults can play it, but it is a kid's game.
Just to take it to add one more element to it, there's the kind of story connections, but there's also the gameplay connections that link it to Assassin's Creed, that you're not just Sly Cooper throughout Sly 2. You can play as his partners in crime, Bentley the turtle and Murray the giant pink hippo. And so Assassin's Creed has dabbled in kind of multiple characters, sometimes with Syndicate and with Unity as well, and they all have kind of different powers.
You had Evie Fry and Jacob the Pink Turtle.
Yeah, exactly. And and they all kind of exhibit different pieces of the Assassin's Creed formula. That Sly is very agile and mobile, and he does all of the parkour stuff. And then Bentley, he's actually in a wheelchair, so he has all of the kind of gadgets things, and he uses those kind of ingenious inventions to get around people and to escape from frozen stuff. And then Murray, because he's a giant pig hippo, can beat the ever-living whatever out of everybody. So he kind of has third-person character action sort of beat 'em up style to him, and it just fits perfectly.
I'm absolutely
Shall I
astounded.
just not bother with my one?
I'm absolutely astounded. All right, well, let's move on to Tom's pick. We've still got 10 minutes to fill. We might as well. Tom, firstly, what is your pick, and which version of your pick is it?
Well, while James is going on there forever, I did think about changing my choice because like there are a lot more in my mind. Suddenly all these games came into my head, sort of like the Arkham games would be a good choice for this, wouldn't they? Probably.
I would accept.
I probably should have got The Witcher. The Witcher 3 probably would be a good one.
I wouldn't accept
I think
The Witcher 3.
was more influential on Assassin's Creed than
Yeah,
Assassin's
I
Creed
think
was
that's-
on The Witcher.
I think-
That's why I didn't choose that one in the end, because I thought exactly that. And then I was thinking like the Mordor game, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Good choice. You'd probably let me win. If I picked that, I'd have been winning this
If
episode.
you picked Shadow of
yeah.
Mordor, I would
But
have.
I didn't
you would
pick
have
any
won.
of those games.
You didn't.
because
No, you didn't.
I made this choice very rashly this morning.
This morning, before you say the name of it, after basically complaining to me that, suggesting to me that there weren't many games that fit this topic.
Yeah.
And now your mind is swimming
think
in
I
much
said
this choices.
This topic is bullshit. I'm pretty sure is what I said to
Those
you.
are your exact words, yeah.
Right, so my choice is another EA game, when EA were like actually doing quite a lot of interesting games, I would
Yeah.
say, which it's like it's like Activision as well. They've moved away from doing loads of different games and just focus on a small bunch of games instead.
Yeah.
So 2008 maybe, I think this was. I think it was about a year after Assassin's. Mirror's Edge was released. You might think that's nothing like Assassin's Creed. I can hear you both, all three of you, even thinking.
I mean, you climb stuff.
But exactly, like of all the for me, the first Assassins, the thing I remember most about it was the parkour stuff. They pushed that a lot. Like the parkour was like the big thing, like the free running and how it was so smooth, and you'd like glide over boxes and up walls and then jump around. It was like, oh, look at this, it's so seamless and wonderful. He just leaps around all the environment. Well, Mirror's Edge does that from first person, does it really, really well. And actually, of like a game of that era holds up very well today. Like I played this on Xbox Series X like 6 months ago or so, and because it's got like the enhancements to 4K and stuff, it looks amazing still. Like I don't know quite how it looks that good, but it does. And it's a bit ropey in certain areas. Like the combat is not amazing, particularly the gun combat stuff is a bit shit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But the actual parkour stuff, which is the link to Assassin's Creed here, clearly they were very influenced by Assassin's Creed. I think it's clear for this podcast anyway that they were very influenced by Assassin's Creed. That the parkour stuff is really good, and it for a first person game where like platforming in first person is often a bit terrible, it does it really well. And you've got like where they've designed the worlds that you kind of know where you're going, even though it looks to be like this big open environment. It's very linear in terms of how you get around it, but it does a really good job of pointing you where you should be going, and there's like color coding in terms of like
Just
what the environment
anything you
means
can
and
climb
stuff.
on is red, right?
Yeah. That's sort of. I think it's a bit more than that, Jim, to be clear. But yeah. So that is my game. It is a really good game. It holds up really well. It's not a kid's game. It didn't close the studio. So therefore probably should win, and is like it's just an all-round good game, and like had a game fairly recently. Like
I guess you could argue that it's kind of in the same genre. Like it sort of has that cyberpunk edge, and you could argue that the latter day framing of Assassin's Creed has that kind of cyberpunk edge as well.
Yeah, exactly, James. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, like if they'd really gone for like the modern day assassin stuff, this is what it would be.
Do you think it's really nice of James to help you out?
Yeah.
He knows. He doesn't believe it, but he's saying it for some reason.
But there is one problem in this, Tom, I think, which is
one
the
problem.
optimum way. Well, many problems, but the big one, the optimum way to play this game, the sort of canonical way to play this game, you don't kill anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't because you pointed out, Tom, that the combat wasn't great, but the entire focus of the game really is to avoid combat, isn't it?
There is shooting and there
you're
is
like a
hand-to-hand.
courier.
Yeah, but
I
she's not
don't
meant to
kill anyone.
people.
I don't kill anyone in Assassin's Creed when I play it. Is that not how you meant to play it?
But no, like, yeah, I mean, I do see what you mean. It's got the movement, and you are absolutely right. The parkour, the traversal was a big part of, like, particularly the marketing of the first game. It was all about, like, you leap around the rooftops, and this was essentially, apart from the social stealth stuff, the staying on the rooftops was how you evaded guards.
Mirror's Edge is basically sat on rooftops.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like, it's like, if you reduce Assassin's Creed, the first game, down to, like, what do people spend most of their time doing? I would say a good 35 to 40% of your time is spent running across rooftops, trying to find one of those wee pagoda things to hide in. When you've just killed someone and everyone's chasing you, because it's not. I think James is right. It's not particularly a stealth game because it's almost impossible to kill any of your targets without anyone knowing about it. Because you would think a stealth assassin is like Hitman, right? You don't actually want anyone to know that you've made the kill. But Assassin's Creed, you basically go right up to them, stab them in front of everyone, have a conversation in some weird netherworld for about 10 minutes about the fate of the universe or whatever, wipe a feather on the wound that you like you actually stand there and do, like, a bit of admin, and then you run away. So it's I think Mirror's Edge fits. I think all these games fit. And now I've got to pick one. So yeah, once
we all know where this is going.
In my opinion, the Saboteur is just the perfect. It is probably my favourite Assassin's Creed game in a way.
I think the Saboteur is an interesting choice in that it came up against it pretty much came right up against another Sucker Punch game in Infamous. Came out the same year, I think, 2009.
Yeah, probably right. Yeah.
So and I don't think that we should kind of look down on it for closing the studio because it had just such an amazing amount of competition in that year. Like we've mentioned Batman Arkham as well. That came out like a couple of months beforehand as well. Assassin's Creed 2 itself came out a couple of months before the Saboteur, so it never stood a chance, really. It was in that weird era where games actually came out, so who could actually beat? So unless you had unlimited money.
Like the 360 heyday, where, like, every month there was 2 or 3 things that 2 or 3 like 40, 50 quid games that you had to have.
It's why I got into games media, because I couldn't afford to buy all the games.
Yeah, that's why
like
I've come back.
Pulled up outside my house every day with a new shipment of games.
Right. I mean, look, joking aside, all 3 choices are really good, and I think you've made a really good argument from Mirror's Edge. If you zero in on those traversal aspects, particularly, Mirror's Edge is the perfect sort of first-person analog of the original game. And Alex, the Saboteur is, I think, certainly reflects the entire kind of timeline of Assassin's Creed games, what they were at the start and what they became. Like, they did eventually become, they did reflect a more modern world. In fact, like, Syndicate, they described that as being in the modern era because it's post-industrial revolution. We've got, like, not motorized, but we have, like, wheeled vehicles on the streets, and the Victorian era is not that different from how we're living now.
The thing that surprises me, actually, because obviously there's the Saboteur, and the evolution from the Saboteur on the game like an Assassin's Creed game, but slightly more contemporary line, is Watch Dogs, and I'm quite surprised nobody picked Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
But
I think it would feel like a cheat because it is also Ubisoft and it is basically Assassin's Creed, isn't it? Like, it's I mean, if someone had picked Watch Dogs, that's what I would be telling them. I'd be like, you're not allowed to have that. But I was fully prepared to give it to the Saboteur, but then James
bloody
made
hippo,
this,
wasn't it? It was the hippo and the turtle.
There was this. you made this incredible argument for what I remember as the daftest, as you say, furry-inspired platformer. That like every time the topic of remaking or remastering some PS2 classics comes up, there's always some weirdos who want a Sly sequel, and everyone just sort of goes shop. So that's where it lived in my head, and you've completely changed my mind about it. So and I'm very old and on the cusp of becoming quite right wing. So that doesn't usually happen to me anymore. So I got to give it to Sly 2, I think.
Brilliant. I'm really happy with that because I really, really like Sly 2. It's one of my favorite, very nostalgic for it. So it's really brilliant. And you're right, people do want new ones and remasters of them, and they're correct.
I tell you what, I'm going to get a lot of angry tweets about this because I had a lot of angry tweets about the wedding episode because everyone agreed with Tom that Tom was robbed, which Tom says in every episode, even once he's actually won. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to be like, well, Alex won that. You robbed him. You robbed Alex. But Alex is a lot more gracious in Lost than Tom is. So maybe people won't make such a big deal about it. All right. Well, thanks very much for listening, and speak to you later.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.